So look at Anthony Ryder from South Lyon, Michigan, recently selected as the Lions 2020 Fan of the Year. He has a passion about sports broadcasting.
With the 112th selection in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Detroit Lions select Amon-Ra St. Brown, wide receiver, USC. One pride, baby! Yeah! What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Detroit Lions video. Now, the NFL season is over, and the NFL mock season has officially begun. Today, we're going to take a look at an NFL mock draft from an NFL analyst, Jeremiah, and he has a very interesting take on what the Detroit Lions should do at number 6 and number 18, as well as a unique take on what is going to happen inside the top 5. So, with that being said, without any further ado, let's go through and take a look at Daniel Jeremiah's mock draft 2.0. Little bit of a spoiler there, but let's get right into it. With the first overall pick, well, first we'll start with notes. The NFL announced in August that Miami would forfeit their pick, and that's really it. Number 1 pick, the Chicago Bears take Jalen Carter. Now, I think, unfortunately for Lions fans, this is the most likely outcome, whether they are either staying at 1 or whether they trade down somewhere in the top 4. Jalen Carter is probably going to be a Bear, which really sucks because I think he is the number 1 player in the class and the number 1 player on the Detroit Lions board. I won't want to play Jalen Carter, but I think that this is unfortunately the most likely outcome and scenario. Now, pick number 2, the Houston Texans go Bryce Young. I think the best quarterback in the class, is the best processor, has a good arm. I know last year I think was a little bit less or a little bit more underwhelming this year than 2 years ago, this past season than 2 seasons ago when he won the Heisman, but the talent around him was not very good. And Bryce Young, I think, is the best quarterback in this class and would be a great pick for the rebuild of the Houston Texans. Going down to number 3, Tyree Wilson actually falls at number 3 to the Arizona Cardinals. And as unlikely as this might seem, right, over Will Anderson Jr., I think after a really good combine testing where I think Tyree Wilson at his size is going to test out incredibly well. It says his combination of size, length, and production has teams very intrigued. I think once he tests at the combine, he's going to be in the top percentile of athletes. And much like Trayvon Walker did last year, I think that could potentially have him jump the more sure thing prospect, right? Aiden Hutchinson last year was easily the number 1 prospect, but he got passed up by a guy like Trayvon Walker because of traits, because of skills, and because of testing. Turned out Aiden Hutchinson was the better player. Could see history repeat themselves with traits and size and speed and I'd say production a little bit. He had 8 sacks last year. Really, kind of intrigue a lot of teams and see Tyree Wilson go at number 3. The Colts go CJ Stroud at number 4, the second quarterback off the board. I think this makes a lot of sense. The Colts, I think, are a team that would benefit more from having CJ Stroud than Bryce Young. I think that they are going to be better with somebody that's a little bigger, somebody that can stand in the pocket a little longer, somebody that can deliver the deep ball a little bit better with better accuracies, right? Or the Houston Texans have a pretty poor offensive line and need somebody to make plays and kind of improvise. I think that the Indianapolis Colts have a better running game. They have a better offensive line with a guy like a former All-Pro Quentin Nelson in front of him. I think he'd be better in Indianapolis than a place like Houston, and I think this would be a good pick for them. Going down to Seattle, I think pretty obvious, right? You go with Will Anderson Jr. I think the second best player in this class and the best edge rusher in this class bends very similarly to Von Miller. Production very similar to Von Miller. Funnily enough, the pick is from the Denver Broncos, who drafted Von Miller. But I think that this makes a good pick for the Seattle Seahawks as well. Just kind of going quickly through it. Myles Murphy at the 6th overall pick. This is a take that is pretty common, and I'm going to spend a little bit more time on Myles Murphy. I think this is a decent pick for the Detroit Lions, right? As I said, Aiden Hutchinson was a home run pick, and fellow rookie James Houston was very productive in limited playing time. I think had 8 sacks in less than 100 pass rushing snaps. James Houston did, and had like 20 something pressures in under 100 snaps. It was some crazy, crazy number pressure to pass rush rate. But Myles Murphy would give the Lions 3 outstanding young edge rushers. And while this is true, I'm not entirely convinced that this is the best move for the Detroit Lions, right? Because Aiden Hutchinson is a 3-down player, 4-down player who should play every single snap. I think you have a guy like John Kaminsky, who is another good run-stopping edge rusher. You just drafted a guy in the second round like Josh Pascal. You had rookie breakouts of James Houston. You have guys returning like Julian and Romeo Okwara. And really, the Lions are 7 or 8 deep at edge rusher. So while Myles Murphy, I don't think is a bad pick, I think Myles Murphy, in fact, would be a pretty decent pick for the Detroit Lions. I would almost rather them take the number 1 cornerback off the board, and I think that is Devon Witherspoon from Illinois, rather than take the 3rd best edge rusher in Myles Murphy. Not because I think Myles Murphy is necessarily bad, just because I think it would fit the Lions better to get the number 1 cornerback in this class and address defensive line later. So with that being said, I think Myles Murphy would be a good pick. I don't think would be the best pick. Vegas goes Will Levis. I'm not a big fan of Will Levis, but I think that the Raiders probably will be, right? They need a quarterback. If they trust him over Richardson, I think that would be a pretty easy pick to pencil in. Lucas Van Ness, the 8th overall pick to the Falcons, I think a solid pick, boosting the defense. I think it's a solid pick overall. The Panthers end up passing on Anthony Richardson and go Peter Skoronski. I think they need O-line help. They went with Ike Mekwonu last year, and I think Peter Skoronski can either play tackle or guard for them, be a really good player for them. I think this is a good pick, right? I think there are guys like the tackle from Ohio State, Paris Johnson, who is bigger, and I think profile is better as a tackle, but Peter Skoronski was arguably the best tackle in college football last year, or at least best draftable tackle in college football. So I think this is a good pick for Carolina. Devon Witherspoon goes here to the Philadelphia Eagles, and I think this is a really good pick. I wish this was the Lions pick, but alas, that is not the case. I think he is the best corner in the class as well. Paris Johnson Jr., again, has the potential to go in the top 10 at that Panthers pick if you want to swap him with Peter Skoronski. However, you have Paris Johnson going here to a team that needs offensive line in the Tennessee Titans. Jordan Addison, a big weapon for Bryce Young. I think that's a good pick. You have Broderick Jones. I think this is another good pick. There's been rumors that he could potentially be the first tackle taken as well. 13th overall pick. Again, very interestingly, the Jets are passing on a potential quarterback of the future and a potential superstar quarterback in Anthony Richardson. But I think that offensive line is the right pick there. Christian Gonzalez goes to New England, and I think that's a good pick. Height, weight, speed, good Bill Belichick corner with some corners leaving free agency. That makes a lot of sense. Dalton Kitnick, I think best receiving tight end in the class. Good player. I think this is another good pick, and I think this is an easy one to pencil in for the Packers. Then you get close to the Lions. Joey Porter, unfortunately, goes off the board at 16. This would be the other cornerback I would want the Detroit Lions to target. Fortunately goes here. Will come up on Pittsburgh. We have Darnell Wright. I think getting Kenny Pickett some protection is a good idea. And then the Lions will go Anthony Richardson. I don't mind Anthony Richardson. I think he's, in fact, a very good player. I have him graded as a top 15 talent in this class. As it says, can sit behind Jared Goff for at least a year, kind of learn the more fine-tuned things about being an NFL quarterback because he has the arm, he has the legs, I even think, the pocket presence and the feet to be an all-pro quarterback. I just think he really needs more repetitions, right? He's only played 1 year as a starter at the collegiate level and will now be making the jump to the NFL level, which is even tougher to do. I think giving him time to sit would be the best thing for Anthony Richardson. Having him learn behind a quarterback like Jared Goff and learn in an offensive system like Detroit under Ben Johnson would be the best case scenario. Anthony Richardson could be enough for Ben Johnson to potentially stay the offensive coordinator for a few years and really develop him. But if not, could definitely teach him a few things in his first year before he ends up leaving for a head coaching job. I think this would be a good pick. I think if you walk away from the first round with your potential quarterback one, which I think at this point is a value, as well as I think a top 6 talent in the draft in Myles Murphy, you're doing a pretty good job for the Detroit Lions. Obviously, we talk more about the Detroit Lions, but overall, I think this class, at least the start of this class for Detroit, if you start off with Myles Murphy and Anthony Richardson, definitely sets you up for success long-term in the future. But I do question when you're going to address cornerback going forward and kind of going through the rest of this draft. Now, finishing it off, Tampa Bay goes with Bijan Robinson, best running back in the class for the worst rushing attack in football. Seattle goes with JSN. I think there are bigger needs than wide receiver, but not a horrible option for the Seattle Seahawks. The Chargers go Quentin Johnston, the big body, speedy wide receiver. I think adds some size and speed to the Chargers wide receiver room. Good pick for them, especially knowing Keenan Allen may be on his way out the door. Brian Branch to the Baltimore Ravens. I think if you have a wide receiver here, like the kid from Boston College, who I think has the potential to be number one receiver in this draft, but Brian Branch is a decent pick as well. Minnesota Vikings, Deonte Banks, a cornerback that's getting a lot of first-round hype. Vikings need secondary help for sure. I think that this makes a lot of sense positionally. Brian Brzee goes right around where I think he should be valued. I think it's a good pick. Again, I think maybe the Jaguars should target cornerback because that was their biggest struggle a season ago, but not a bad pick. You have Jalen Hyatt, the speedster, to pair with Daniel Jones. I think a good pick again for them, adding another receiving weapon, a receiving weapon that they really didn't have, right? The Giants going into the playoffs were relying on Kadarius Hodges. And, once Wan'Dale Robinson got hurt, they really didn't have any wide receivers of note. They really relied on the running game, but I think Jalen Hyatt could open up a really good passing attack for what Daniel Jones and the reigning head coach of the year, Brian Daboll, wants to do there in New York. That makes a lot of sense. Keon White, pass rusher for Dallas, can never have too many pass rushers. Tank is getting a little older. With Bijan Robinson gone, I think this makes a lot of sense. Could definitely help improve the rushing attack as well as, just the overall pass protection as well. You have Michael Mayer to the Bengals. This makes sense, right? With Hayden Hurst heading in free agency, you pair Jamar Chase and that elite wide receiving core with a really good receiving tight end. It makes a lot of sense. I'd say Bengals potentially go defense because of all of the defenders they're going to potentially lose in free agency, but not a bad pick for Cincinnati. Zay Flowers, this is the one I was talking about for the Baltimore Ravens, ends up going to the New Orleans Saints. I think with not a quarterback on the board, I think this makes a lot of sense. Continue to build weapons for when you can get your young quarterback. Felix Anutika Azamoah, I believe I said that right, hopefully goes to the Philadelphia Eagles, adds a pass rusher for a guy that they're probably going to be losing in free agency. Nolan Smith goes to Kansas City, again, a pass rusher for a team that potentially is losing Frank Clark. And that will conclude the draft. Now, just going over the Detroit Lions yet again, because that's really what we're here for. I think Anthony Richardson is a good pick, right? With the quarterback market being completely out of control, I wouldn't mind a rookie contract, especially with contracts like Jonah Jackson, Penei Sewell, Aiden Hutchinson, Kirby Joseph, James Houston in the next 2 years is going to be up for a big contract extension. You have Amon-Ra St. Brown who's coming up. You have Ali McNeil who's coming up, right? You have a lot of your contracts, a lot of your rookies are going to start coming up very, very soon. And I think it'll be hard to pay your core foundation without a rookie quarterback on contract. So I don't mind the idea. And then, of course, at 6, you take Myles Murphy. Personally, I would take it from the Philadelphia Eagles and go with Devon Witherspoon, the best cornerback in the class over the third best edge rusher in the class. However, Myles Murphy, not a bad pick for the Detroit Lions overall. So with all that being said, that's all I got for you guys today. That is Daniel Jeremiah's mock draft 2.0 before the combine. Has the Detroit Lions going edge rusher as well as quarterback early in this draft. And going into day 2 with heavy needs at cornerback, I'd say interior defensive line and linebacker. But with all that being said, that's all I got for you guys today. Thank you so much for watching. And until next time, and as always, go Lions.